Does the temperature outside really impact how easy or how difficult it is to control our temperatures? And do our vent settings change much? Well, that's what we're about to find out today. Let's get started. Hey, I'm James from Smokin' Dad BBQ, and I'm coming to you from the warm weather. Whereas, where it's much, much colder, we're still not allowed to hang out with friends, but I did get some new winter Crocs. See, we got nice traction, no slipping, ready for winter. And me, are tag teaming on this one a couple months apart to answer one of the most common questions that you guys ask me, us, this is weird, stick with present tense, that you guys ask me, which is how does the weather impact controlling our Kamado Joe vent settings? And so to pull this off, we're going to do a bit of an experiment a couple months apart and record our vent settings to see if there's really a difference in what vent settings hold what temperatures, as well if it's any easier or more difficult to hold that temperature in summer weather versus the winter weather. Now, to eliminate the variables, so there's this few external factors impacting this experiment other than the weather itself, what we're going to do each time is use a clean basket of charcoal, and I'm going to use the basket for the Joe Jr. as a measuring device just to make sure I add a similar amount of Jealous Devil charcoal now as what I'm going to do in the winter. The second thing we're going to do to try and eliminate variables is use the Kamado Joe slow roller instead of the heat deflector plates. Deflector plates are great and they perform really well, but you have some choice where you set them. You can move them left, right, front, back, etc. Whereas the slow roller just sort of drops on and the base only fits one way. And that'll just potentially reduce the human error factor of me maybe having the plates in one position now and a different position in the winter months that could impact our variables. And then the third thing we're going to do is the temp controlling and tracking. And now, if you haven't done this already, you should be recalibrating your dome thermometer about every 6 months. As the spring and fall weather or really high heat cooks can throw those for a little bit of a loop and they need to be recalibrated. I'll put a link down below if you want to check out that video. But to, again, just make sure there's no potential for error, we want to be measuring down to the degree. I'm going to be using the Inkbird BBQ 4T, where I can log the probes and the pit temperature for, let's call it, we want to see about a 15-minute period of time where we're exactly at those temperatures. So we know it's not just a flash reading. And then we'll take a picture and record our vent settings, lock it in the history books, and repeat this experiment when it's much, much colder outside and see if there's a difference. Anyways, that's what you're in for today. Thanks so much for asking this question. If there's another video or topic you'd like to see me do, go ahead and let me know down in the comments while we get to work setting up our Kamado Joe Classic for today's experiment. Okay, so as I mentioned, I've got our official measuring device, my kick-ass basket for the Joe Jr., which I'm just going to go ahead and fill up with charcoal and try and have that be similar for both experiments. Okay, that looks good to me. Let's go ahead, we'll just dump that into our basket now and start our fire as well as assemble our slow roller. I'll show you how I'm going to do that in fast forward. Okay, so for building low and slow fires using the slow roller, what I like to do is first install the base, and that's it while we're building some heat. So we're going to light this charcoal, get our bottom vent all the way open and our top vent all the way open so that we get max airflow for lighting our fire. So when setting up for a low and slow cook using the slow roller, I always do it the exact same way or similar to my setup for my foolproof low and slow video using the heat plates. And that's first to let some heat get in our dome. What makes the Kamado Joe such a stable cooker is the fact that those ceramics get heat soaked and then make it really easy to control the oxygen in our fire. If we just go off of a false reading and start adjusting our vents, we'll get into a bit of a yo-yo pattern, and it's really hard to pull ourselves out of that tailspin. And so whether you're using the deflector plates or you're using the slow roller, the best way to get your fire to end up really, really stable is to install the base and nothing else. Light a nice fire in the center and wait till you start to see that temperature come up to your target temperature, maybe a little bit beyond. So today we're starting with 250 degrees Fahrenheit as our target temperature. So I will not be concerned if I see 250 to even 350 degrees on the dome. And to check if it's a real temperature, we're gonna go ahead and just feel the outside. And if there's zero heat in our dome, that is nothing to be concerned about, because usually what's happening there is some flames are just coming up and hitting the bottom of our temp probe and suggesting that it's far, far warmer inside than it actually is. Once that starts to happen we will go ahead and install the top portion of our slow roller, our divide and conquer rack, as well as our grids. And this is where we'll make our first vent adjustment from wide open, and the temperature will drop quite significantly as it starts to recover. This is where we're going to continue to make incremental adjustments until we reach our target temperature, nice and stable, of 250 degrees Fahrenheit. I'll see you in a couple minutes once we are ready to start taking some of those actions on our Kamado Joe Classic. Okay, our grill is now reading 300 degrees, but we are not 300 degrees yet, as this is just starting to get a little bit of heat in the dome. And so let me show you what I think is going on, where we have that fire coming up the inside. And that's exactly what we've got. So we've got some flames just coming up, starting to hit the bottom of our temperature probe, which is giving us that 300 degrees. But this is now the perfect time to install the rest of our slow roller and start reducing the speed of temperature building inside of our Kamado Joe. So we'll install the slow roller, the divide and conquer rack, and our cooking grids. So let me show you the vent settings that we're going to go with now. So while we're still building heat, we're going to put our top vent in the closed but max open position while that continues to recover. But we are going to go ahead and adjust our bottom vent now down to 1 finger's width. Okay, since 1 finger width may not be exactly the same for everyone, and because I also have the iCommand plate installed in front of my OEM plate, I'm just gonna go ahead and quickly measure that and say that our opening is just about 3/4 of an inch. If I can try and get exactly, I'm gonna go ahead and call that 3/4 of an inch. So for my science-oriented friends, 1 finger's width today is gonna be represented by 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so now that we've got our bottom vent adjusted and our top vent still in the open, max open closed position, waiting for temperature to build, let's go ahead and install our Inkbird tracking probes. And so to do this, I'm gonna go one right here in the center plate, right beside the grid line, and my second probe at the back, so we can actually look for front and back difference in the exact same location, just on the other side of that line. Just move my wires out of the way. So that we will do the exact same thing in winter, where we're pushing the grids into the divide and conquer. So we're in the center position on the outside of this line, front and back, and as equal as possible on the probes themselves. Let's go ahead, turn on our Inkbird, and get tracking. Okay, so we've just started to hit that 250 degree range. Looks like there's about a 5 degree difference so far between the front and the back probe, with the back probe actually reading a touch cooler. Let's go ahead and adjust our control tower top so that we don't continue climbing too quickly. And I'm gonna start with the 75% mark between our first 2 lines, and maybe that's more like 60-40, and just wait till we stabilize and see if that lands us right exactly where we want 250, or if we need to make any micro adjustments. Once that's stable, the plan is to hold that for 15 minutes or so, just to make sure we've confirmed our vent settings, and then I'll get the camera really close so we can lock that in and say this is exactly where we want to be for 250 degrees. Okay, so now that we slowed the temperatures from climbing fairly aggressively, they've just started to dip back down. So to not drop below that 250 degrees, I'm just going to go from that 60-40 to about that 75-25 spot between our first two lines. Okay, so now that we've slowed down the grill from climbing, we need just a touch more air in order to not dip below that 250 degree mark. So I'm just going to come over here now to what I would call about the 80th percentile on our first tab. And if we can get a measurement here, I'd say we're about 1/3 of an inch between the tab on our control tower top and the first line on our vent. So let's go ahead and take a look at our data in 15 minutes and see if we can confirm this is our vent setting for 250 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, it's been 15 minutes and our grill has been holding now a flat, stable line at about 250 degrees. I think 252, 253, and we are sitting just a degree difference between our front probe and our back probe. So that's one of the reasons I love the slow roller, is it just seems to do this really good job of evening out the heat distribution. But I've never checked it with a probe like this before just to see if it actually is the same front and back of the grill. So really pleased with that. So let's lock in our vent settings for 250 degrees at warm weather. I'll bring the camera a little bit closer to show you exactly where we are, as well best as I can with a measuring tape to show you what that represents in terms of an exact measurement. So let's lock this in, and then we're going to open the vent and start working our way up to our 350 degree Fahrenheit settings. Let's go ahead and crank this and wait a couple minutes till we start getting closer to 350, and then what we'll do is start making some adjustments. My guess for 350 degrees is I think we'll end up just inside this line, but we'll figure that out in a minute. Okay, so we are gaining temperature quite rapidly. We're now within 5 degrees of our target temperature. So I'm going to go ahead and make my first adjustment to just inside the third line on our Kamado Joe control tower top vent. Maybe even actually just a touch more aggressive, because like driving your car, we're now starting to dab the brakes to slow down so we don't accidentally race back or race past 350 degrees. So I'm going to give this a couple minutes to stabilize with that adjustment, and we will adjust from there whether we need a touch more air, which we will know if we start to drop temperature. So right now we're looking at 345 and 346 degrees respectively on our two probes. So if they start to go the wrong way, we can inch a little bit forward, or if they still continue, you know, climbing and to the point of going past 350 degrees, we can get a touch more aggressive. But right now, I think this will serve us well. Let's give this a couple minutes and see where we land. Okay, so we've been holding steady at this temperature for the last 15 minutes or so. So definitely, I think we guessed about the right position. Maybe started at about 5 degrees too late. So the ideal time would have been to do this about 10 degrees before our target temperature versus the 5, as I was getting distracted doing some other things making the video. But it's definitely been holding that nice flat line. And for reference, we are a ½ inch if you go to the far side of the line here on our control tower top vent. So that is about ½ inch to the far side. Yep, let's go. Oh, I'm moving it there. So ½ inch to the far side is what is holding that 356, 357 degrees. I think it would be the exact same setting if we had just stopped it at 350 by starting a little bit earlier. All right, so that's a wrap for our warm weather temperature settings. I'll rejoin you shortly when it's sadly much colder, and see if our locked in vent settings for 250 and 350 degrees Fahrenheit are the same or significantly different, or if we have any more, you know, challenges controlling temperatures in a completely different temperature environment. All right, so freezing cold James, over to you. So I'm not going to repeat everything that I already covered in terms of how to set up for today's cook. I'm going to follow the exact same steps. So I'll just bring the camera a little closer and go really, really fast forward, but we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to use our charcoal basket divider from the Joe Jr. as our measuring device, use the exact same charcoal, fire it up the exact same process, and I'll rejoin you once we've got our temps stable and show you our vent settings at 15 degrees. But since it's been a couple months, just thought I'd show you Bella, our Portuguese water pup, and how quick she's growing and absolutely loving the snow. So I'll let her go back to playing while we fire up our Joe. There you go. Go have fun. Go have fun. All right, our grill has held steady for about 20 minutes. Let me just show you that on the Inkbird, and our front and back, once again, are within, anywhere from 1 at one time to max 3 degrees of one another. So right now, it is reading 252 degrees, fluttering 251, 252, pretty stable. Let me bring you a little bit closer because we're gonna call this our locked in winter mode setting. Okay, so just like we did in summer, let's go ahead and record this vent setting. I'll try and get a picture of that or take a screenshot before I potentially move it with the measuring tape here. And we are looking for, to the far line, just about 1/3 of an inch. So let's compare how we were to the summer. From memory, that feels actually, I think, the same setting. While we record that, let's go ahead and just crank our temperature and start building some heat to ramp up towards our 350 degree vent setting. All right, so we've been locked in at 350, actually 350 and change. Just like the summer, we went 4 or 5 degrees past that 350, but I've been holding a flat line for the last 15-20 minutes or so. So let me bring you a little bit closer and show you the vent settings that we're locked in for 350 in the middle of winter. Okay, so I'm really curious to see how this will compare to our summer vent settings once I can do a side-by-side. But going from that to the, looks like the far side of our third line, we are right on 1/2 inch. Okay, so there we are, 1/2 inch, and we are still 1 finger on the bottom, just like we were on summer. So let's do a quick recap. So there we have it. Despite a 50+ degree Fahrenheit temperature change, below freezing temperatures, to my eye and the tape measure, I can't really see any difference whatsoever in the vent settings using the exact same charcoal, the exact or hopefully as close as to exact amount of charcoal using our measuring device, our Joe Jr. basket, and the exact same grill. Flash forward into the future with a much, much cooler temperature. The Kamado Joe is operating with the exact same settings to reach both our 250 degree low and slow temperature, as well as our grilling temperature of 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, you guys ask me this question all the time, and I've never actually been able to check other than go from memory to say, yeah, I think, it works exactly the same in winter as summer. And so I was really curious to see if we'd need a bit more air in order to achieve the same temperatures. Turns out, nope. If you can hold a temperature steady the way that you like to do it in the warm weather, the same principles will apply in the winter. And that's just speaking to the advantage that you get with a Kamado Joe or any ceramic cooker, is that they retain heat so well that once that fire gets going, and you set your vent settings, it's just steady Eddie, regardless of what's going on outside. No blankets or any extra gear needed. Just fire it up, enjoy it as you would, regardless of what the weather's doing outside. So I hope this video was really helpful, answered your question. If you liked what you saw, please let YouTube know by smashing that thumbs up button, and let me know by hitting subscribe to catch future videos. I'll put this in a playlist down below along with some other recommended videos for one-on-one. If you're just if you're new to Kamado Joe cooking and just getting started, there's a ton of questions. I've been at this just for a little bit more than 10 years, but these are all the things that I wondered about when I was just getting started. how do I control my temperatures? How do I get my grill set up? What type of fires should I be building for what type of cooks, etc. Long list of questions, and I put a whole playlist together just to help fast start your cooking journey, so you don't have to wait 10 years like I did, trial and error, learning the hard way what works and what doesn't. Anyways, time for me to sign off. Hope you enjoyed this video once again, and remember, don't be afraid to fire it up, rain, shine, or snow. We'll see you next time.